This is a story about translating ideas. In previous stories, I talked about visualization of energy transfer. I talked about remapping that visualization into structures that I could explain as they relate to business systems. And I also talked about the idea of perfect secrets, which is a secret that only you know in a language that only you know, which means you're the only one that's ever going to know it because you could never tell unless you translate it. And this is a story about translating this perfect secret of mine. I had done extensive analysis of this model in my mind and rebuilt it in a way that I could explain to people. And this was around 2008. And so I started explaining it to people, showing it to people. I'm like, look, a model of a business system, but really it's a model of energy transfer. And I learned this when I was 10 and like all this stuff. And of course, well, maybe not of course, but as I'm used to, no one understood me. And even though to me, everything I was saying should be understood by other people, not just because I spent at that point 30 years, about almost 30 years, 27 years. Wow. 27 years thinking about it, trying different things in my mind. And this version of the explanation, which later became Honey is Money, this version of the explanation about energy and energy transfer, to me was like super obvious. Like if someone, this is like the confirmation bias of understanding. If someone had showed me this model and explained to me that it was cross-sectional snapshots of a sales funnel representing the value of the money flowing through and all the processes that move the money and the performance of the people doing the work at each step in the process, represented in this spatial way, color-coded based on performance numbers, I would understand it. I'd be like, oh yeah, obviously. And explaining this to people in 2008 in my sort of giddy excitement of being able to explain it got me nowhere. In fact, probably was a setback in terms of sort of the confidence I had in my ability to connect this idea to other people, because I knew that this eco project that I was planning at that point, in 15 years or so, depended on me explaining this idea about energy transfer. So I realized a couple things. Everybody knows the world in different ways. Everybody has a different, every person has a unique perspective on everything, even words, where there's no commonly agreed definition of love. I know this because I have a diagram of love and I post it on Twitter and people like complain like about it because it doesn't match their definition of love because it doesn't contain pleasure. And that is a kind of love, but not the kind of love that I'm describing in my mind in this particular scenario. So anyway, it was a time where I was sort of reflecting on the differences in people and the way people understand things and how I could possibly translate this to bridge this gap and decode my model into something that's more commonly understood. And so what I did was I hired somebody named Jen to help me translate this. And she was a copy editor, super brilliant person. And she helped me. She listened to my ideas, pour out of my mind. And she made me an outline, structured. And that was really the first time I had ever thought about a structured way to explain something. Because my mind's spatial, radial. Things are connected in a way that's not sequential in the way that I imagine other people think in I think like more like in four-dimensional flowcharts would be the best way to say it. And other people I imagine think in words that are, I think, maybe structured the way like an outline would be, or at least writers do. And this Jen was a writer, so of course that was the perfect person to talk to. And she listened to my ideas about energy transfer and the components of it. She made me an outline, and we made a website called Energy and Information Systems that later turned into a website called Business Visualization. Actually, I'd hired a different person to do the Energy and Information Systems one. And then I hired Jen to turn it into Business Visualization. Because what I've learned about translating these ideas is I have a way of explaining energy transfer that applies to all systems: a marble, an oven, an engine, a business. And I believed in 2008 that starting with the explanation that was about business was the surest path to success, because I was using this model to make money, and I could prove everything I was saying, like with numbers and graphs. And because I was measuring the things that were making the model. So I was like converting these numbers and stuff into the model to show people this model. And no one cared. No one cared. And I was like surprised, because like I'm in business with a lot of business people who, like, one of the objectives of business is to run efficient businesses and make money. It's not the only objective, but that's like we talk about it a lot. Like that's like one of the main topics, like profit and loss and things. But like nobody cared, and nobody could see how these models were helpful, except to me, because I understood what they meant. And so Jen helped me translate this, businessvisualization.com. It's still alive on the internet. And I'll put a link to it here. And basically it's just it's a textbook explanation of the translation of this idea. And I turned it into this website because I wanted to explain it to a software developer, to build software that does this. And basically, so my way of explaining it on the website is like a code specification to someone that I could show and send them the link and be like, let's build this. And to a software person, it would be doable. It would be something that they could convert into software, which I did. The other thing I learned in this phase is the concept of money is that no one I've met so far understands money the way that I do. And I'm not saying I'm not an economist, or like I didn't study this in like school, but money is energy, and all of the same aspects of energy apply to money, with storage, transaction fees, which is like friction, everything. And I'm not gonna go through here, but so I guess what I really learned is that my conceptualization of money was comprehensive and different than other people's in the way and in the gap of what I was trying to explain. I was saying things like money is energy. And what I realized after years of this is none of the people I was talking to understand money. They think they do, but they don't. And none of the people I was talking to understand energy. And none of the people I was talking to know that the energy of all energy around us came from a star, mostly the sun, and in nuclear power, another star. And like, what does that mean? And what are we trading for work? And how do we tokenize that work and money? Like basically, I was getting nowhere. And that led to Honey is Money. But, it's nice to find experts and nice to be able to translate things into things that other people can understand.